Have you ever stayed in a relationship not because you wanted to, but because leaving felt wrong? Not wrong in a dramatic way, just quietly wrong, like you'd be disappointing someone, like you owed them your presence. At first, it looked like love, care, loyalty, commitment. But over time, something shifted. The warmth faded, the effort felt heavier, and what once felt like choice slowly became obligation. Stoic philosophy has a clear warning about this, not about love, but about self-betrayal. Because when love turns into duty, peace is often the first thing you lose. And without peace, even the most loyal relationship becomes a silent drain on your life. Today, we'll explore 6 Stoic warning signs that reveal when love has quietly turned into obligation. Not to tell you to abandon anyone, but to help you stop abandoning yourself. Listen closely. One of these signs changes everything. 1. You stay because guilt feels like love. There's a quiet moment many people recognize, but rarely admit. It's the moment you think about leaving, and instead of clarity, you feel guilt. Not because the relationship is good, not because you feel fulfilled, but because walking away feels like you'd be doing something wrong. This is the first Stoic warning sign. You are no longer staying out of love. You are staying to avoid guilt. At this stage, love has subtly changed shape. It no longer feels like choice, it feels like debt. You tell yourself things like, after everything they've done for me, or I can't just leave them like that. On the surface, these thoughts look noble, loyal, moral. But Stoicism asks a harder question. Is this virtue, or is this fear wearing a virtuous mask? And the Stoics were deeply suspicious of guilt when it replaces reason. Because guilt, unlike virtue, does not come from clarity. It comes from emotional pressure. Real love is voluntary. Guilt is coercive, even when no one is openly forcing you. And this is how obligation is born. You begin measuring your actions not by what is right for your character, but by how bad you'll feel if you don't comply. You anticipate their disappointment, their sadness, their reaction, and slowly, almost invisibly, their emotional state becomes your responsibility. From a Stoic perspective, this is the moment you step out of your proper role. Stoicism teaches a clear boundary. You are responsible for your choices and your character. You are not responsible for managing another adult's emotional reactions. And when guilt becomes the glue holding a relationship together, something important has already been lost. Freedom. And without freedom, love cannot remain love. It turns into emotional labor, performed under moral pressure. Marcus Aurelius warned that many people live in quiet self-betrayal, not because they are weak, but because they confuse endurance with virtue. They tolerate situations that drain them, believing that suffering itself makes them good. But Stoicism never glorified unnecessary suffering. Virtue is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate. It is measured by how truthfully you live. If you stay because guilt tells you that leaving would make you a bad person, ask yourself this Stoic question. If guilt were removed, would I still choose this relationship freely? That question matters more than any promise you've made under pressure. Notice how guilt operates. It doesn't invite dialogue. It doesn't ask for honesty. It simply says, you owe. And once you accept that premise, the relationship no longer needs mutual care to survive. It only needs your compliance. Stoicism offers a different path, not coldness, not abandonment, but clarity. Caring for someone does not mean carrying them. Loyalty does not mean self-erasure. And love that depends on guilt is not strengthened by sacrifice. It is prolonged by silence. Here is the Stoic practice for this sign. Pause before reacting to guilt. Name it clearly. This is guilt, not love. Then return to choice. Ask yourself, calmly and without drama, am I choosing this freely, or am I staying to avoid emotional punishment? You don't need to decide anything yet. Stoicism is not about impulsive exits. It's about honest awareness. Because the moment you see that guilt is the reason you're staying, the illusion breaks. And once the illusion breaks, obligation loses its power. Remember this Stoic truth: guilt is not proof of love. Choice is. And where choice no longer exists, something essential has already been compromised: your inner freedom. That is the first warning sign. 2. Love feels heavy instead of voluntary. There is another moment that often follows guilt, and it's even quieter. Nothing is wrong on the surface. No arguments, no clear betrayal, no dramatic breaking point. Yet every time you think about seeing them, calling them, or spending time together, your body reacts before your mind does. You sigh. You delay. You feel tired before anything even happens. This is the second Stoic warning sign. Love no longer feels voluntary. It feels heavy. At the beginning, love carries energy. Even when it requires effort, that effort feels chosen. You want to show up, you want to give, you want to be present. But when love turns into obligation, effort loses its meaning. What remains is weight. Stoicism pays close attention to this shift, not emotionally, but rationally. Because the body often recognizes truth before the mind is ready to admit it. The Stoics believe that nature is a guide. When something consistently drains your energy rather than renews it, nature is giving you information. Ignoring that information does not make you virtuous. It makes you disconnected from reality. Here's the danger. Most people don't notice this shift because they confuse difficulty with depth. They tell themselves relationships take work, and that's true. But Stoicism draws a clear distinction between chosen effort and forced endurance. Chosen effort strengthens character. Forced endurance erodes it. When love becomes something you brace yourself for, instead of something you step into willingly, obligation has already taken root. Notice the language you use internally. You no longer think, I want to. You think, I should. I should call. I should visit. I should be more patient. That word, should, is a quiet alarm. It signals that action is no longer driven by desire, values, or alignment, but by pressure. Social pressure, moral pressure, emotional pressure. From a Stoic perspective, this is a problem because virtue must always be chosen freely. Once action is driven by compulsion, it loses its moral value. Seneca warned that nothing noble is done under force, not even kindness. And yet, many people stay trapped here for years. They keep giving, hoping the heaviness will lift, hoping effort will turn back into warmth, hoping obligation will somehow transform itself into love again. But obligation does not soften with time, it hardens. Another subtle sign appears here. Resentment. You don't express it. You may not even consciously feel it yet, but it leaks out as irritation, emotional distance, or numbness. Not because you're cruel, but because something inside you knows the exchange is no longer balanced. Stoicism never asked people to suppress this awareness. It asked them to examine it honestly. Ask yourself this Stoic question: do I feel lighter or heavier after interacting with this person consistently over time? Not once. Not on a good day or a bad day, but as a pattern. Patterns matter more than intentions. A relationship grounded in love may be challenging, but it does not require you to override your inner signals indefinitely. When it does, you're no longer practicing virtue. You're practicing self-neglect. This is where many people make a critical mistake. They try to fix the heaviness by trying harder, being more understanding, giving more grace, and saying yes when they want to say no. Stoicism calls this misplaced effort because the problem is not effort, it's misalignment. What is real does not need constant inner resistance to sustain itself. Here's a simple Stoic practice for this sign. Before an interaction, pause and notice your body. After the interaction, pause again. Don't judge. Don't explain it away. Just observe. Stoicism trains awareness before action, because without awareness, action becomes blind sacrifice. If love has become something you endure rather than choose, the Stoic response is not guilt and not panic. It is clarity. Clarity restores choice, and choice restores dignity. Remember this Stoic line: what is real never needs force. What is right does not require you to betray your own nature. When love becomes heavy, it is no longer asking for commitment. It is demanding compliance, and that is the second warning sign. 3. You carry emotions that aren't yours. At some point, the heaviness turns into something more subtle and more dangerous. You're no longer just showing up. You're managing how the other person feels. Their mood sets the tone. Their disappointment lingers in the air. Their sadness becomes something you feel responsible for fixing. This is the third Stoic warning sign. You have taken ownership of emotions that are not yours. You may not realize when it starts. It often hides behind empathy and care. You tell yourself you're being supportive, understanding, patient, but slowly, the dynamic shifts. You begin adjusting your words so they won't feel hurt. You suppress your needs so they won't feel abandoned. You change your behavior so they won't feel upset. From a Stoic perspective, this is a critical boundary violation. Not by them, but by you. Stoicism teaches a foundational principle. You are responsible for your actions and judgments. You're not responsible for another person's emotional reactions. When you forget this, love turns into emotional labor. The other person doesn't have to ask you to carry their feelings. Often, they don't even do it consciously. But if their emotional state consistently dictates your behavior, responsibility has been quietly transferred. And that transfer comes at a cost. You stop asking, what is right? You start asking, how will this make them feel? This seems compassionate, but Stoicism draws a sharp distinction between compassion and self-erasure. Compassion respects boundaries. Self-erasure dissolves them. Over time, this dynamic creates a quiet anxiety. You are always scanning, reading the room, anticipating reactions, not preparing emotional buffers. You are no longer present, you are vigilant. And vigilance is not love. It's control disguised as care. Epictetus warned that when we attach our peace to things outside our control, we become their prisoners. Other people's emotions are firmly outside your control, no matter how much you care. Yet in obligation-based relationships, people confuse responsibility with rescue. They believe, if I don't hold this together, everything will fall apart. But Stoicism calls this illusion out clearly. You are not required to be someone else's emotional regulator. You are not obligated to absorb distress that is not yours to carry. When you take on that role, two things happen. First, resentment grows. Even if you never express it, something inside you begins to resist. You feel drained, irritable. You're numb, not because you lack love, but because you're carrying weight that doesn't belong to you. Second, the other person is quietly disempowered. When you manage their emotions for them, you deny them the chance to develop resilience. Stoicism values strength, not dependence. This is why the Stoics emphasized emotional sovereignty. Each person must govern their own inner world. Ask yourself this hard Stoic question: am I acting from care or from fear of how they will feel? Fear-based care always leads to obligation. There's a common rationalization here, but if I don't do this, they'll suffer. Stoicism responds calmly. Suffering is part of being human. Shielding someone from every uncomfortable feeling is neither possible nor virtuous. Virtue lies in honesty, boundaries, and appropriate responsibility, not in emotional absorption. Note, here is the Stoic reframe you need to hear. You can care deeply without carrying what isn't yours. You can be kind without becoming responsible for another adult's inner life. This does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming clear. A practical Stoic boundary sounds like this internally. I can offer support, but I do not own the outcome. And sometimes externally, it sounds like silence, or space, or refusing to fix what you did not break. Try this Stoic practice. The next time you feel responsible for someone's mood, pause. Ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let go without guilt. Not all discomfort needs your intervention. Not all sadness is your duty. Remember this Stoic truth. Their emotions are not your assignment. Care does not require carrying. When you consistently feel responsible for how someone else feels, love has crossed into obligation, and that is the third warning sign. 4. You're afraid to speak the truth. There is a moment when you realize you're no longer being fully honest. Not because you're lying, but because you're withholding. You pause before speaking. You soften your words. You edit yourself mid-sentence, not to be kind, but to avoid consequences. This is the 4th Stoic warning sign. You're afraid to tell the truth. At this stage, love has stopped being a space of mutual honesty and has become a space of emotional negotiation. You're no longer asking, is this true? You're asking, will this cause tension? And so you choose silence. Stoicism treats this as a serious problem, not morally, but structurally, because truth is not optional in a healthy relationship. It is the foundation of self-respect. When you regularly suppress truth to preserve peace, means what you are preserving is not peace at all. It is avoidance. The Stoics made a clear distinction between harmony and comfort. Harmony comes from alignment with reality. Comfort comes from avoiding it. And comfort is fragile. Over time, this fear of honesty reshapes you. You stop sharing what you really think. You stop expressing what you really need. You stop naming what feels wrong. Not all at once, but gradually. You become smaller, not visibly, not dramatically, but internally. Marcus Aurelius warned against this exact erosion. He wrote about the danger of living out of character, of saying and doing things not because they are right, but because they are easier. From a Stoic perspective, this is self-betrayal. Every time you swallow a truth to keep someone calm, you teach yourself that your inner clarity is less important than their comfort. And once that lesson is learned, obligation tightens its grip. You may tell yourself, I'm just choosing my battles. But ask yourself honestly, are there any battles left you're allowed to fight? When fear replaces honesty, resentment quietly takes its place. You begin feeling unseen, unheard, misunderstood. Not because the other person is malicious, but because you have stopped showing up as you actually are. Stoicism never asked people to be blunt or cruel, but it insisted on one thing: integrity of speech. To speak truthfully does not mean attacking. It means not abandoning reality. Here's the paradox. The more you avoid truth to keep the relationship intact, the more the relationship becomes dependent on your silence. And silence, when forced, becomes a form of emotional labor. At that point, love is no longer mutual expression. It is maintenance. Ask yourself this Stoic question: what truth am I avoiding, and what does it cost me to keep avoiding it? The cost is rarely immediate. It shows up later as exhaustion, distance, emotional numbness, and eventually as disconnection from them and from yourself. Stoicism teaches that peace built on dishonesty is temporary. Only truth creates stability. This does not mean every thought must be spoken. It means the core truths, the ones that define your boundaries, your needs, your values, cannot be endlessly postponed without consequence. A Stoic approach to truth sounds like this: calm, clear, and grounded. No accusations, no emotional bargaining, just reality, spoken without fear, even if the other person doesn't like it, especially if they don't. Because your responsibility from a Stoic perspective is not to manage reactions, it is to act with integrity. Here is a simple Stoic practice for this sign. Notice the truths you rehearse internally but never express. Write one of them down. Ask yourself, if I spoke this calmly and clearly, what am I afraid would happen? That fear holds information. Sometimes it reveals that the relationship only works as long as you are silent. And if that is true, the problem is not the truth, it's the structure of the relationship. Remember this Stoic line. Truth is not aggression. Truth is an act of self-respect. When you are afraid to speak honestly, love has already begun to cost you your voice. And that is the fourth warning sign. 5. You endure, hoping it will change. There comes a stage where you are no longer confused. You are simply waiting for them to understand, waiting for things to improve, waiting for the version of the relationship you keep remembering or imagining. This is the fifth Stoic warning sign. You are enduring not because things are good, but because you hope they will become different. At this point, love is no longer happening in the present. It exists in the future you keep postponing your life for. Stoicism is very clear about this trap. The Stoics warned against living in imagined outcomes instead of observable reality, because hope, when it replaces evidence, becomes a form of self-deception. You tell yourself, they're trying, or it's just a phase, or if I'm patient enough, things will shift. But notice what's actually happening. You keep adjusting, you keep compromising, you keep lowering expectations, and the relationship remains the same. From a Stoic lens, this is not virtue. It is misdirected endurance. Endurance is only virtuous when it serves growth or meaning. When endurance becomes a way to avoid making a difficult observation, it turns against you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that time reveals truth, not promises, not intentions. Time reveals patterns, and patterns are the Stoics' most reliable teacher. If something has not changed after repeated, honest effort, then what you are seeing is not a temporary problem. It is the structure. Many people confuse endurance with loyalty. They believe staying proves moral strength. Stoicism rejects this idea. Staying in something harmful does not make you noble, and it makes you unavailable to a better use of your character. Here's where obligation tightens its grip. You start believing that leaving would mean all your effort was wasted, that your patience would have been for nothing. This is a psychological trap known as sunk cost, but Stoicism recognized it long before modern psychology did. Seneca warned that people often cling to what harms them simply because they have already invested so much. But time invested does not justify time wasted. The Stoic question is not, how long have I stayed? It is, what does staying cost me now? When you endure a draining relationship, hoping it will change, several things quietly happen. Your standards erode, your energy diminishes, your sense of agency weakens, and worst of all, so you stop trusting your own perception, because admitting the truth would force a decision you're not ready to make. Stoicism teaches radical honesty with reality. If the relationship requires you to constantly sacrifice clarity for hope, it is no longer sustained by love. It is sustained by avoidance. Hope is not a strategy. Observation is. This does not mean people cannot change. It means you must judge change by actions, not words. Stoicism urges you to watch behavior over time, without emotional bargaining, without giving infinite chances, without rewriting the same story to avoid discomfort. Ask yourself this Stoic question. If nothing changed from this point forward, would I still choose to stay? Not if they improved, not if they finally understood, not if they became who you hope they'll be, if nothing changed. If that question cuts through illusion, Because obligation survives on future fantasies. Love lives in the present reality. Here is the Stoic practice for this sign. Stop negotiating with time. Observe patterns calmly. Adjust your access, not your arguments. You do not need to explain yourself endlessly. You do not need to convince anyone to change. Stoicism is not passive. It is decisive without being dramatic. Sometimes, the most self-respecting action is not leaving immediately, but withdrawing blind hope. When hope is removed, truth becomes visible. And when truth becomes visible, obligation loses its strongest weapon. Remember this Stoic line: endurance without wisdom is self-destruction. Virtue is clarity, not martyrdom. If you are staying mainly because you believe things might change someday, love has already stepped aside, and obligation has taken its place. That is the fifth warning sign. 6. You feel peace only when you're away. There is one sign that brings everything into sharp focus. It doesn't arrive as a thought, it arrives as a feeling. You don't notice it while you're in the relationship. You notice it the moment you step away. You feel lighter, your breath deepens, your mind quiets. And for the first time in a while, you feel like yourself again. This is the sixth and most decisive Stoic warning sign. You feel peace only when you're not with them. Stoicism places enormous value on peace of mind, not comfort, not pleasure. Peace, because without inner peace, virtue cannot be practiced consistently. Judgment becomes clouded, character weakens, life narrows. So when peace appears only in absence, the Stoics would not ignore that signal. They would examine it carefully. And peace is not something you should need to escape to feel. If calm only returns when someone is not present, the relationship is no longer aligned with your nature. And Stoicism teaches that living against your nature, persistently and knowingly, is a form of inner violence. Many people resist this realization because it feels disloyal. They think, if I cared more, I wouldn't need space. Or, everyone needs breaks. This doesn't mean anything. But Stoicism is not interested in comforting stories. It is interested in patterns. Occasional relief is normal. Consistent relief is information. When you consistently feel calmer, clearer, and more grounded away from someone, your system is telling you something your mind has been trying to rationalize away. This doesn't mean the other person is bad. It doesn't mean you never loved them. It means the relationship as it exists now is incompatible with your inner stability. Stoicism never taught people to endure environments that corrode their character. Marcus Aurelius wrote that just as you would remove yourself from unhealthy physical conditions, you must also remove yourself, mentally or physically, from environments that damage your inner state. Peace is not a luxury. It is the foundation of virtue. Without peace, patience becomes forced. Kindness becomes performative. Discipline becomes brittle. And eventually, love becomes obligation. This is why the Stoics warned against staying in situations that require constant recovery. If you need time alone to repair yourself after every interaction, the relationship is not neutral. It is depleting. Ask yourself this Stoic question, honestly and without guilt. Do I feel more myself with this person or away from them? Not happier, not distracted, but more yourself. If the answer is away, then something essential is being compromised when you stay. Many people try to fix this by taking more breaks, creating distance while remaining emotionally bound. But Stoicism would say this only treats the symptom, not the cause. If peace exists only in absence, the relationship is not a place of rest. It is a place of tension you've normalized. And normalization is how obligation survives. Here is where Stoicism becomes very clear. You do not owe your presence to anyone at the cost of your inner stability. You do not sacrifice peace to prove loyalty. and you do not stay where your character cannot breathe. This does not require dramatic decisions. Stoicism does not rush, but it does not lie to itself. The practice here is simple and difficult. Notice where peace returns. Notice where it disappears. Tell yourself the truth about that pattern. No arguments, no self-judgment, no urgency, just clarity. Because clarity restores agency, and agency restores dignity. Remember this Stoic truth. Peace is not optional. It is the ground on which a good life stands. So when peace only exists in distance, love has already stopped being a source of strength. And obligation, quiet, familiar, and heavy, has taken its place. That is the final warning sign.